Like we just told you, the court proceedings have begun in Moscow, where the prosecution has demanded a 3.5-year jail term for Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny. In fact, we'll be going to Moscow and trying to connect with our correspondent Stuart Smith, who has been tracking this story for us. Now, remember, Navalny's team had asked for protesters to gather outside the Moscow prison. The court proceedings have begun, and we got these visuals just a few moments ago where protesters were detained by the Russian police. Remember, more than 5,000 people were detained by the Russian police on Sunday itself. The case has just begun. Stuart Smith now joins us live from Moscow. Stuart, what's the latest? We saw some detentions even today.
Yes, this is the moment that protesters have been trying to influence by coming out over the last 2 weekends. And there are protesters coming out again today. They were called by Alexei Navalny, with his team retweeting, "No one except for you can save Alexei from the tyranny of Vladimir Putin if people don't come out today." And people have come out today, not nearly in the same scale that we saw over the weekends, because anyone who appears on the streets and seemingly cannot prove they are press are being asked why they are here and being either arrested or asked to move away if they aren't able to demonstrate they're not protesters. Where I am, outside the Moscow courthouse where Alexei Navalny is currently being trialed, there are a huge number of police. So a strong ring of steel around the courthouse to make sure that proceedings are not disrupted. What Alexei Navalny is in trial for relates to a suspended sentence way back in 2014. He received this suspended sentence based on a fraud charge, and now prosecutors say he broke his bail conditions by going to Germany for treatment, which means they're pushing for his suspended sentence to be turned into a real prison sentence. That could potentially land him in prison for 3.5 years, and that's what most analysts in Russia are expecting will be the outcome of today's hearing.
Stuart, by when can we expect the court to deliver its verdict in this case? And just talk about the detentions made on Sunday. Over 5,000 people were detained by Russian police across the country in just one day of protest. Now, this has raised several reactions from the West, which have criticized the strong arm tactics that have been used by the Russian police.
We have no indication about when we will find out a result, so we'll keep tracking this over the afternoon. But in terms of the protests last weekend, indeed, over 5,000 arrests, 5,600, the latest figure. That is a record in Russian history for one day of arrest. Most of these people arrested on the day itself, but a few hundred of those have been rounded up since the protest ended, with authorities retroactively going and finding who attended and charging them with either minor charges like hooliganism, right up to organising an illegal mass protest, which can see many years in prison. We're talking 8, 10, 12 years in prison if authorities want to push it that way. So these rallies unsanctioned, illegal due to COVID-19 regulations as well as the usual protest laws, but people turning out in their tens of thousands across Russia regardless. Some of them to try and support Alexei Navalny and demand that he is released from prison, but many of them also just expressing a sense of discontent and anger at a system they believe is failing them, both with corruption, alleged corruption, and also economic problems.
Stuart, when Navalny came back to Russia, it sparked widespread protests. Navalny's team promised another set of protests. They staged another set of protests this weekend, and thousands of people came out on the streets, despite a warning by Kremlin authorities for people to avoid these protests. Even today, despite multiple warnings, we've seen the protesters take to the streets in Moscow and some other cities across Russia. So this must be a cause of worry for the leaders of Russia, that despite multiple warnings, Navalny continues to generate so much support.
Yes, President Putin has said that people have a right to express their opinion in Russia, but as soon as expressing their opinion violates the law, then it becomes not only counterproductive, but dangerous. Protesters saying, though, that the reasoning behind mass protests being banned, COVID-19 restrictions, is not the true reason protests are being banned. For example, single picket protests are banned in Moscow, which clearly have no epidemiological association, but yet they are also banned. So people fed up with seemingly the state saying one thing to protect them, but also then not allowing protests and freedom of speech in the way that people would like to express themselves. The president's press secretary has said that people should not be out on the streets, that it's dangerous, and that to negotiate with any of these so-called provocateurs, these so-called hooligans, is something that Russia will not do. Alexei Navalny's supporters not only hoping, though, for Navalny's release from jail today, also hoping for some sort of political change in Russia.
Stuart Smith, thank you so much for joining us live from Moscow, from outside the court where Navalny's hearing is currently underway. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.